2.5 years ago, I put out a video called the 5-1000 Watch Challenge, which was basically where I tried to put together a well-rounded 5-watch collection for under $1,000. And this wasn't so much to say that you guys should have built this, but more just to illustrate that there are some great affordable watches out there. Now, these days, inflation sucks. Prices are up everywhere. And I started thinking about that older video, wondering if it was even still valid or if prices gone up too much. So I thought it'd be fun to revisit that old video and see how much prices have changed. And if that collection doesn't work, how would I change it up today? And just because I'm me and I like to overcomplicate things and I'm always changing straps, I also decided to include replacement straps or bracelets in that total if the original ones suck, which unfortunately is often the case with really affordable watches. So we're going to factor that in as well. Up first, we have the GMT of the collection. In fact, back then, I gave each of those watches a descriptive nickname. You had the GMT, the Dress, the Flieger, the Quartz, and the Wildcard. But back to the GMT, and here, right out of the gate, we automatically have a problem. And that's because I selected the Vostok Reef GMT, and with extra strap, I think that was about $206. But this watch is problematic for a number of reasons, and it all stems from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Even beyond the whole should you or should you not buy Russian thing, Vostoks right now in general are harder to get. And this one in particular, I'm not sure if it ever really came back in stock. So it's pretty much out. However, luckily Seiko has introduced the NH34 GMT since that video came out. So there are a lot of great affordable options out there for a GMT. At the very end, I'll put together a whole new updated collection. But if I just wanted to swap this one out for something with a similar price, I'd probably go with the Pagani or Steel Dive Homage. Perhaps a little better built, maybe, but definitely less interesting than the Vostok. Next up is the Quartz of the collection, and here I picked a G-Shock square. Now, any square would really work here, but I went with the B5600 as well as an aftermarket metal case and bracelet. Back then, the watch was about $139, and the case was about $55, so total here was $194. Now, these days, that same square is surprisingly right around the same amount, sitting at $140 on Amazon. I can't quite find that exact same bracelet strap combo, but there are a whole variety of them listed on AliExpress, some for a little bit more, some for a little bit less. But overall, I think this would still work. Up next, you got the dress watch. And it's no surprise that for an affordable dress watch, I went with my Gen 2 V2 Bambino. It's a little big, but still a solid, gorgeous watch. Back then, the Bambino was going for $120. And the replacement strap I got, because the stock strap sucks, was another $34. So total was $154. Although here, we got another problem, because today that same Bambino is going for $170. Then throw in that extra strap, and you're looking at a total of $204. So you're looking at a 25% increase, but overall it's still not bad for what you're getting. And I think it is still going to be workable into the budget. And by the way, while that particular Bambino is up, there are some others that are still a little bit cheaper. For the fourth watch, we have a Flieger, as well as another problem. In that original video, I picked the Escapement Time Flieger from AliExpress. For $100, it was a fantastic watch. Keyword was. Not too long ago, I did an updated video on escapement time, as they've now drastically changed it. The blued hands are gone, the dial is a little duller, and now it comes with a VH31 sweeping quartz instead of an NH35 automatic. So definitely not the same watch at all. And an automatic pass for a lot of the quartz disliking enthusiasts. However, as much as I dismissed it in that video, it is still a good watch. In fact, I wound up giving it to my father-in-law, and he flat out loves it. He's not a watch collector, but he wears this thing every day. So the new version is still good, especially because they lowered the price, but it's not quite what it was. However, I think it still works for this collection, just because it's still one of the better Fliegers out there for the price. So with the new updated price, we're looking at $70 for the watch and $39 for that nice strap. So total is $109. And for the last watch, I decided to go with a Wildcard, as in a watch that could fill a variety of roles. And for that, I decided on Orient Kamasu, which at the time you could actually find on the rubber strap for about $200. So take that, put it on a strap code bracelet for 90, and at a little under 300 bucks, you had a great solid watch. Today though, depending on the colorway, they're about the same, and in some cases even less. The crimson one that I have, as well as the green dial version, were always a little bit more. But today they're on Amazon for $225. And that one with the rubber strap is actually on Amazon and Joma Shop for $170. So again, throw that on a strap code bracelet, and you're looking at $260 for a pretty good diver. So by swapping out the Vostok, the collection is a little bit different, and perhaps downgraded with that Quartz Flieger. But surprisingly, it's still about the same, and all for a total of $907. So I think it still works. However, if I was going to do this today, I would do things a little bit differently, and I'd start off with the diver, because that's just the cornerstone of most collections out there. Now the Kamasu is still a great option, and I'd be tempted to go with it here as well. But these days, it's really hard to ignore the quality that's coming out of San Martin for the price. And for that, you got lots of options. If you want to go the homage route, there's this newer sub or newer black bay. And those are about $220 for an enamel dial, ceramic bezel, and an on-the-fly adjustable clasp. But I think I'd actually go for this newer one they just sent me, which is kind of an Omega Grand Seiko mishmash. So I'd say it's sort of semi-original, but here you have a nice fume dial, a ceramic bezel, as well as that new adjustable clasp. So total for this one is $258, and since that bracelet's good, no need for anything extra. Next up, everyone needs a good go-to quartz watch. And once again, there are a ton of options out there in this price range. However, I'm going to go with a more recent review, and for bonus points, it's also a Flieger. This is the Citizen Garrison, a budget-friendly, sapphire-covered, solar-powered super titanium powerhouse from Citizen. And super titanium, that's just Citizen's name for titanium with a scratch-resistant coating. Now, current prices are all over the board with this one. And of course, it does depend on the color as well as if you want a bracelet. Looking around, I've seen them as low as $160, but I've also seen them as high as $320. Right now, this black dial version that I reviewed is $245 on Amazon, so that's what we're going to go with. And while the bracelet here isn't necessarily the best bracelet around, I think it's good enough. But more importantly, it's also made from that same super titanium, so you'll probably want to keep it together. For the third watch, everyone needs a beater, and for my money, that means Casio. Actually, not this Casio, but this Casio. So I'm going to go with the Casio Royale, as not only is the Royale extremely affordable, it's also one of the coolest looking watches Casio makes. Plus, bonus points here for being a world timer. The Royale has an awesome design, but we gotta admit it's also still pretty cheaply made. I mean, the thing is like 20 to 30 bucks at times. So for this one, we are gonna upgrade it a little. Now, ideally, I put it in this case and bracelet combo from SKX Mod. For some, it's crazy to spend 150 bucks to upgrade a $20 watch, but personally, I love it. It takes the Royale to a whole other level, and I think it's on par with a lot of $200 to $300 Seikos out there. After I modded mine, I sold my old square G-Shock and haven't looked back. Unfortunately, the budget here is a little too tight to do that. However, we're still going to upgrade the strap because I think that's the worst part of it. And for that, we're going to go with a nice leather one from Vario. And you can always do that SKX mod later. So 22 bucks for the Royale, 28 bucks for the strap, and you're looking at a total of 50 bucks. Gotta love Casio. Next up, we need a dress watch to round out the collection. And this was a particularly hard one for me to pick out. At this price, my go-to is always a Bambino. But since I'm trying to do something different than the other collection, I didn't want to use that. There are also some good AliExpress options out there, and I was thinking about using that Sector watch from San Martin. But I already got one San Martin in this collection already, and I'm trying to make this a little more balanced in terms of brands. So after a little bit of back and forth, I decided to go a little old school with this Seiko. This is the Seiko SNKL 23, and it's one of the best looking of the older Seiko 5s. The older ones with the 7S movement. And this one in particular actually had a bit of a cult following in the day. Heck, it even had a little bit of a resurrection story, disappearing one day only to pop up a couple years later. The downsides to this one is all going to be in that 7S movement. Saying it's old at this point is an understatement. And yes, this one also only has mineral crystal, but just look at it. Now prices have gone up, but right now you can find them on Joma Shop for $115. And obviously the stock bracelet sucks, so I took it off immediately. It's in a pile over there somewhere. And instead I decided to go with this Horween one for about 25 bucks. So all in, you're looking at 140 bucks for a pretty good looking watch. For the last watch, I thought this one could use either a GMT or a chronograph to round out the collection. And once again, AliExpress would have some great options. However, I wanted to do something a little different, perhaps a little more interesting. And I started thinking about the Swiss watch company Ark GMT for 250 bucks, which is not a traditional GMT by any means, but it is definitely interesting. Now, I've reviewed most of the watches from the Swiss watch company, but the Ark GMT isn't one of them. However, both Alton and Dave have, and they were kind enough to share some footage. So if you are interested in this watch, go check out both of their reviews. And from what I can see, it's a good looking, solid, unusual watch at a great price. It is quartz, which I know some of you are going to be disappointed with, but it's a great looking, unusual, and functional design. And for the price, 250 bucks, it's a really well built watch. The Swiss watch company knows what they're doing when it comes to making a good watch. Plus, you gotta remember that Swiss watch company always goes overboard with the AR and the loom. And that's never a bad thing. So, all in with this updated 2023 version, you're looking at 943 bucks. Not counting shipping or taxes, of course, but that's not bad. It's definitely not perfect, and I definitely had to make some compromises here. But that's what I really like about this whole video idea, the original 5-1000 challenge, is putting together a fantasy collection with no limits is easy. But here, when you're more based in reality, you gotta make some tough choices. Overall, I think this would work pretty well, and it's fairly well balanced in both movements and brands. You got a Seiko, you got a Citizen, a Casio, a semi-original San Martin, and a micro brand thrown in for good measure. Now this time around, I think this was a little bit harder to put together. Some prices are the same, but others are up. Like that SNKL, a couple years ago that was more like 80 bucks. Plus a lot of the newer models do seem to be a lot more than they would have been a couple years ago. So while some of the older models may have leveled out and are the same, there have definitely been some changes in the world. And once again, I'm not saying you should go out and buy every single one of these watches and build this collection. I'm just doing this to show you that even though times have changed, there are still some great affordable options out there. Well, and I think it's actually fun to do these kinds of challenges now and again. So if you want to take up the 5-1000 watch challenge, let me know your 5 picks down below. As well as what do you think about my options? And as always, do something down below, like, comment, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. I'm Shane, this is All the Time, and I'll see you next time.